You know when you see a trailer for a movie, get kinda interested, buy a ticket, then realize the trailer completely misled you? Yeah, that's the Trojan horse that is Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. Welcome to Pass the Popcorn. Let's talk about it. Before I continue, this isn't a historical accuracy review. This is simply my thoughts on Christopher Nolan's adaptation of Homer's Odyssey as a film. The first thing you need to know is this. If you're expecting a faithful adaptation of ancient epic with the larger-than-life gods and a colorful Bronze Age world and every myth brought to life, you may leave disappointed. But if you're happy to sit back with a bucket of popcorn and watch a dark, character-driven war epic inspired by one of history's greatest stories, then there's lots to enjoy here. So rather than compare every tiny detail, I want to focus on some moments that stood out to me the most. Let's start at the very beginning, with the Trojan horse. What I didn't like? That design. Where are the wheels and why does it look like this? Look at it. Really, look at it. What I absolutely loved though was seeing the men inside the horse. It never really hit me before just how long they would have had to wait to stay hidden there. Wondering what could have happened if they made the slightest noise, and the film does a fantastic job building that tension. Also, the horse is dragged to Troy, and the soldiers packed inside trying to stay completely silent while the guards are thrusting their swords in the wooden sides. That was such a simple idea, but I really liked that sequence. It turned one of the most famous moments in mythology to something really nerve-wracking. Then we actually get to the sack of Troy, and it was awesome. It's chaotic, it's violent, it perfectly captures the horror of men forced in a decade-long war, and you can feel the rage when they run through the city. Nolan doesn't romanticize the victory. There's no glorious celebration or a heroic fanfare. Just terrified civilians, soldiers carrying out horrific orders, and the beginning of the trauma that will haunt Odysseus for the rest of his life. The music, the pacing, and the sheer scale of the attack are all fantastic. That is until Agamemnon walks through the gates looking like a Bronze Age Batman. I'm sorry, I burst out laughing when I saw that. That reveal, wow. The weapons throughout the film are actually the strongest historical touches. The bronze swords, the spears, the shields all feel grounded in the late Bronze Age, but then the armor turns up looking like they wandered from a completely different movie. It's genuinely distracting, especially for one of the most important moments in Greek mythology. Now we've established what kind of film Christopher Nolan is making, let's actually go into the journey. This is where Nolan really starts putting a stamp on Homer's story. Some of the changes, again I said, are fantastic. Some completely caught me off guard, and a few left me scratching my head like, why? First stop, let's talk about the Cyclops. And honestly, I was disappointed. Not because it wasn't scary, it was actually quite the opposite. He was very scary. Yeah, almost like animalistic, this creature that kind of lives symbiotically with sheep and knows how to make cheese. And also devouring Odysseus' men and transforming the cave into something that feels more like a horror film than a fantasy adventure. But my disappointment is what he removed from the Cyclops. It never speaks. In Homer's Odyssey, Polyphemus isn't just a monster, he's a character. I mean, he has personality. He talks, he mocks Odysseus, he falls for the nobody trick, and most importantly, Odysseus just couldn't resist revealing his name after escaping. That moment of pride allows Polyphemus to call upon his father Poseidon to curse Odysseus. And because of that, Poseidon's role in the story just feels smaller. Which for a god, that's a shame, really. For me, it just removed the most satisfying cause and effect moment in the entire epic. Odysseus isn't punished by the gods because of fate, or he was destined to. He was punished because of his own arrogance. And that was such an important part of who he is and to the story, and I really miss seeing it because Matt Damon's portrayal, he's not egotistical. Then we arrive at Circe's Island. And this is probably where Christopher Nolan takes his biggest liberty with Homer's story. In the original, Circe is mysterious, seductive, and incredibly dangerous. She lures Odysseus' men in, transforms them into animals, and eventually becomes one of Odysseus' lovers, with the crew remaining on her island for around a year before finally continuing their journey. Now take what I just said and throw most of that away. This version of Circe isn't seductive at all. Instead, she's portrayed as a broken woman who's terrified of men. Rather than transforming Odysseus' crew out of mischief or manipulation, her actions felt driven more by fear and years of trauma. It's a completely different interpretation of the character. Whether you like the change really depends on what you wanted from the film. Personally, I miss the mysterious enchantress from Greek mythology. That being said, I thought the pig transformation itself was fantastic. But the thing that surprised me was how quickly everything moves on. In Homer's story, they stayed with Circe for a long time. Here, it was almost over as quickly as it began, literally, in an afternoon. Next up is Calypso. And this was another change that surprised me as well. In the adaptation, Calypso's island feels like a paradise, almost otherworldly. She has servants, caves, food, and genuinely feels like a place to tempt someone to stay in forever. Here, it's basically a sandbar. She's fishing, living completely alone. I understand Nolan's reasoning to strip away that fantasy and reinforce the loneliness, but visually, it was probably my least favorite location. It never really felt like that mythical island she lived on. It just looks empty. Also, the relationship between Calypso and Odysseus just felt different. In most versions, you feel the emotional weight of when Odysseus finally leaves. You get that sense that Calypso genuinely is in love with him and doesn't want him to go. Here, that heartbreak just doesn't exist. Personally, I miss the emotion and the mystery surrounding that part of the journey. Whether it was a good thing or not, it will depend on what you're looking for again. One sequence that really disappointed me, though, what I was actually looking forward to seeing, was Scylla and Charybdis. In Homer's Odyssey, this is one of the most memorable parts of the journey. You're caught between a terrifying six-headed monster on one side and a giant whirlpool on the other, forcing Odysseus to make an impossible choice. Here, it just flies by. Also, Scylla, it looked so weird, especially since everything was in broad daylight and not a creepy cave. So when you actually see Scylla, it looks off to me. I don't know, I can't really describe it. It kind of looked like a very fluid creature with skin that looks like it's stone or like thick leather. It's gray. It was a mess for me. Next to Sirens, we barely registered that they were there. They make an appearance in like the far distance, but the only way we knew that they were singing was Matt Damon's performance, which was great, by the way. Him being tied in the mast, he was fantastic. But I wish we could have actually maybe seen them or maybe heard the music, because we can't even hear anything. Though his description was really spot on. It was very good. So yeah, the whirlpool doesn't feel like the unstoppable force that it should. Scylla didn't really leave an impression, just left me confused. And the Sirens were, little dots on the mist. Again, all these sequences were so iconic in the episodes, and they're just over so quickly that I feel like we could have focused more on those bits instead of other moments in the film. It just took away the biggest opportunities for me. Now, a favorite scene of mine in the film was actually Hades. Rather than depicting Hades as some grand fantasy kingdom of fire and brimstone, Nolan takes a different approach. It's bleak, black shoreline where the dead slowly emerge from the sand in the darkness. The whole sequence feels incredibly eerie. It's quiet, it's unsettling, it's almost dreamlike. It reminded me less of fantasy adventure and just more like a horror ghost story. I also love how the dead don't appear just to deliver exposition. They feel trapped, restless, like the souls who just never found peace. Watching Odysseus forced to confront the men he lost throughout his journey was genuinely emotional. One conversation that stood out, though, was Agamemnon's warning. Rather than celebrating the idea of finally returning home, he tells Odysseus to be careful. Don't expect a hero's welcome. Sometimes the greatest danger isn't in the battlefield, it's the people waiting for you when you return. I thought that was a fantastic moment because it adds another layer of tension to the journey. Even if Odysseus survives every monster, every storm, home isn't guaranteed to be safe. Now, eventually, Odysseus does make it home, and honestly, this is where the film completely got me. The moment with Argos absolutely broke me. I don't care how many times I see the story adapted, the scene just doesn't get easier. Here's this old dog who's waited 20 years for his master to return. He's barely hanging on, but the second Odysseus comes home, Argos recognizes him instantly. He doesn't need a disguise to fool a dog. He doesn't need to announce who he is. He simply smells him, slowly wags his tail, and after all those years of waiting, he can finally let go and cross on. And yeah, I cried at that bit. I'm a big animal person. I lost my dog recently, so that scene really got me. It was such a simple, beautiful moment, and I think one of the most powerful scenes in the film. And I think it was handled beautifully, but I think it was also handled just a little bit too short. Anyway, back to the characters. Penelope is also very different from the version I grew up with. She's not this very hopeful, patient wife waiting by the window. The 20 years have changed her. She's colder, harder, and far, far more guarded. At first I wasn't sure about the change, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. And 20 years of uncertainty would change anyone. Anne Hathaway did a very good job, personally. I thought she did really well. Now, I didn't really buy Tom Holland as Telemachus at first, but he did grow on me. I like that he isn't just waiting around to be rescued. He has his own story, his own struggles, his own adventure, his own reasons to stand up against the suitors. It just gives him much more agency than just simply being Odysseus' son. And speaking of the suitors, Robert Pattinson is such a sniveling little shit stirrer. And I mean it as the highest compliment I can, of course. Every time he appeared on screen, I just wanted to punch him in the face. Everything about him I hated, and he absolutely nailed the role. The suitors are great, and together they create this constant feeling that once Odysseus returns home and sees how completely taken over he is, he's going to lose it. By the time the final confrontation arrives, it doesn't feel like a triumphant hero returning home. It feels like a man who survived monsters, gods, and war, and to discover that the hardest battle was waiting for him in his own home. And trust me, that was worth the wait. Seeing him wiping them out, I never smiled as hard as I did watching the movie. And also watching Antonius, Robert Pattinson's character, screaming at the suitors to fight while he's desperately trying to hide from Odysseus' arrows had me laughing.
Get him! Someone do something! What the fuck? Use the shield! Use the sword! Get him now!
Again, he's such a little shit, and Pattinson deserves an award for that role. Now, the biggest disappointment in this movie for me wasn't the editing, not the pacing, it's the costumes, because what is that? What is that? Like, there are moments where the costume department does nail it. I was looking at my husband and he's more into history, and I just see him scowling next to me. It's just bulky, it's over stylized, and in some scenes it looks more like a kid's costume held together with tape. And Agamemnon was the biggest offender. Every time he walked on screen, I just couldn't stop thinking, like, why does he look like a Bronze Age Batman? Charles Node's work from The Odyssey in 1997 is still one of my favorite costume designs ever put on screen. Those costumes felt elegant without losing practicality. You instantly understand who every character is just by looking at them. He really was one of the best designers in Hollywood. I highly recommend you guys look into his filmography. He's done some amazing work. Rest in peace, Charles. But yeah, I just never got that feeling that, it's elegant, nice, and just nothing. And it's so strange because Nolan is clearly obsessed with architecture, with the weapons, with the location. So seeing the armor like this makes me wonder if they ran out of budget or that he just didn't care. And don't get me wrong, most people probably might not even notice it. But if you're someone who loves costume designing or just love history, you're probably going to wish yourself that they took a completely different path. Despite my criticisms, there are some moments I will remember, like the Cyclops, the different take on the Underworld, the brutality that was Troy, Argos waiting years for his master to say goodbye, Robert Pattinson stealing every scene, and surprisingly enough, John Leguizamo proving that he's more than a comic relief, which surprised me. So, is this movie worth the wait? If you're expecting a faithful adaptation of Homer, you may leave disappointed. But if you're after a gripping epic about war, trauma, family, and just finding your way home, there's a lot to love here. Now, what did you think of Nolan's Odyssey? Did you like it or did you wish he never made it? Is there something that you would want to change from it? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you like this video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And yeah, pass the popcorn.